Hey, Buru, Iboya, Uche, everybody in Cyberland. It's your favorite Balao, at least I hope so. Omodum Ondileke coming at you with another great Sunday. Sunday, I like to reserve for like sermons, right? Let's just talk the good word. And I had some technical difficulties, so I apologize right off the bat that, hey, my apologies again. I tried. I did everything I could to make sure that it was working, and I think I clicked one thing off of another, but nonetheless, here I am, as always, giving back to the community. And in this particular, session, I wanted to kind of touch on with you guys was the aspect of one that was followed up by the first sermon. So last Sunday, for the subscribers or the members, better yet, I had held the very first session of Sunday, right? Sunday is kind of like, one of these great things where, we personally, we need our own level of continuity, right? You know what I mean? In society, we understand that, the religious sectors, right? The Christianities, the Muslim, everybody has the central place where they go, whether it's a temple, a church, or whatnot. And my dream one day is that, hey, we have that same home for ourselves. We have a place where we can reflect on God or Olodumare, and we can kind of move forward. So, last week, we spoke a little bit about the concepts of Olodumare, the Trinity, right? And I want to tie this into what's going on in the world and where are we going and how are we moving? And those things are important. So let me get myself set up here and make sure I can kind of see the chat to kind of see how everybody's doing. So Buddha boy Abuche Chastity. All right, beautiful. Hey, so something that I want to kind of share with you, each and every one of you, right? One, Cyberland is like an Ile. Cyberland is my Ile, right? Outside of my actual Ile, which we have great conversations and we constantly do studies. My job is to give back to you guys. Moyumba. I give respect, right? Last week, we laid out a good foundation, and hopefully you guys were able to see that first sermon, right? We laid out the foundation by recognizing who is Olodumare, the Almighty Creator, right? And then we renovated and we moved on to the ancestors, introducing, our ancestors that are not just our blood ancestors, but the spirits that walk with us. Then we have our beloved Orishas, the divine forces, right? That also came from a concept called Irumole. So today our journey is gonna go even deeper. Right, we're going to focus on the Yoruba cosmological structure, understanding how the divine lineages flow, right, from Irumole to Orisha, right? And what does that mean? Right, we're going to clarify, the descent from the Irumoles, because a lot of us don't necessarily understand, the concept of descent from Irumole to Orisha, right? And understanding that is important. But then we're going to tie it back into what's going on in the world, because if you guys don't know, we have a lot of challenges in our world, do we not? At the end of the day, the world is chaotic, right? But chaos isn't new to us. Each and every one of us, in one way, shape, or form, we see it every day. The news makes a big spectacle. Everything is entertainment. Everybody's trying to pin one person against another. There's wars and conflicts going on. There's famine, right? People are hungry in the streets. We got leaders from different countries fighting over power, while people suffer. While people suffer, right? Depression, fear, anxiety, right? It's taking hold of millions of people, right? Families, right, are breaking up. Values are collapsing. People are losing their way, right? And yet, Ifá warned us, right, that this age would come, right? History has a funny thing of repeating itself over and over again, right? And it's important for us at the end of the day to kind of see that for what it is. Ifá warned us in Odums like an Osameji, right? When the world, right, entered this period of confusion because humanity lost its spiritual anchor, right? In the Odum of Oyekunmeji, we saw where darkness started to rise when people stopped listening to wisdom, right? And then when we go into Eyobe, Baba Eyobe, the two paths, right? The perfect twins, Eyobe, right? The light and the shadow, expand, when humanity begins to forget their own ori, right? So this is a moment that is not surprising to Ifá, but this is a moment of test. If you guys are willing to accept it and pass with a good grade, right? And this is the whole purpose of this. This is why you even tuning in is a beautiful thing. And again, I really hope you saw the first sermon that I had on last Sunday, and we laid out these foundations. We talked about the Irumole Orum, which are the celestial kind of archetypes that came from Olorum, right? From our heaven, our version of heaven, and the Irumoles that became the primordial emissaries that helped shape this world that we live in today, this earth, Aye, right? To the Orishas that manifest the powers of nature, including humans that elevated to a divine status, right? And this knowledge is not theology. This is a source of inspiration. This is our belief system. This is what drives us. This is what drives you, right? And wisdom is the most refined beauty, right? Of any type of human perspective. So by gaining the wisdom about our cosmology, we beautify our souls. We strengthen our faith, right? It is with joined hands, right, community, that we accomplish these tasks. One hand alone can't lift the load of the head. It takes two. You have two arms, two hands for a reason. No different than you have two ears to listen, because you need to be a little bit more attentive than too quick to speak. Together, let's explore these mysteries. Let's explore them a little bit, right? So that way we can better understand, and then we can dig into the chaos that is in today's world. Right, so we understand in the beginning, Olodumare created hundreds of sacred beings, maybe thousands, right, to assist in the ordering of the universe, right? That was your Irumole Orum, the divinities that were first primordially concepted, right? Pure architects, right? Or archetypes, right? Representing each divine principle. And Ifá teaches us that 401 Irumoles were summoned, right? And gathered into Ogba Ashe, which is our celestial realm, right? At the dawn of time. And each Irumole Orum embodies a fundamental Ache, a divine power. And from justice to love to wisdom, in the highest and original forms, right? So think of Orumoles Orum as heavenly blueprints, right? Think of it like that. And for example, this is just an example of an archetypal type force, right? Of victory and thunder that in Orum, right, is called an Irumole. In earth, the reflection of that Irumole, or that energy that transcends and kind of streamlines from where we are today all the way up to that divine blueprint, right? That reflection is known as Changu, right? The Orisha of lightning and justice. And you begin to kind of see where all these archetypes start to come into play. But the pure archetype of, let's say, maternal love or flowing sweetness, in Orum, this is best manifested here as Ochun. So this gives you kind of an idea how these energies began to flow down, right? So with that said, you begin to see that the world, or this world, is just a marketplace, right? Our true home is Orum, right? We are merely just visiting this place called Aye, this marketplace. And this is why within the Yoruba cosmology, this is just a marketplace. This is the stepping stone. And whether or not you went to the market and you purchased the right ingredients in order to make dinner that day, or in order to get something right for your home, that's all dependent on when you leave this world and you transcend back to your true home, Did you get the right ingredients? Did you get what you needed to get? Right? So, the true origins, right? And those of the Orishas lie in that heavenly home. So it's important for us to kind of understand that descent, because that's important. When we honor the Orishas, right, we're also honoring our eternal, right, principles that represent Odum. The Irumole Odum, right, remain with the Lodumare, right, forming this grand cosmic government, right, directing the course of creation, right, from their level onto us, right, and there are countless, right, there are countless, yet unified in purpose. So kind of showing us that divine principle, even though there are many, but divinity is one, right? And I think that's important for us to kind of flow through. So let me take a moment and say hi to a couple of people. I got Chastity, I got Tyshawn, I got Frederick on here, I got Janae, I got my man Chris on here. No, hey, Buddha boy, it's good to see you guys on here. So now let's kind of talk a little bit about the descent, right? Irumule as primordial emissaries, right, to Aye. So let's try to say that in a little bit less theological terms. We have God's pure essence, right, and how it manifests here on this earth and how it affects us. That's Irumule, the primordial emissaries to Aye. That's what that means, right? So when you look at it, how did the world we know today take shape, right? I just told you, we live in chaos. We got a lot of things going on. You know what I mean? I applaud people trying to end conflicts, end wars, right? And what I truly believe, because in the Odum of Obesa, we have to do everything properly. We have to do everything as a community. We have to do everything expeditiously, but we got to do it properly with no shortcuts. If the Odum Obesa is telling us to do that, and we begin to kind of find all these shortcuts to try to get ahead, we're not truly lining ourselves up the way we need to, right? In the sacred Odum of Obedi, it recounts this beautiful lesson, right? When Olodumare sent all the Irumoles down to the earth, they initially arrived with nothing to distinguish them. Not even clothes, not even anything, right? Because we're talking about a pure raw energy now manifesting itself here. Think about it like that. Take a moment to kind of really put your mind there. Now, Olodumare provided one single garment to all the Irumoles to share, to teach them unity and humility. And share they did, right? Obatala, Yemaya, Ochum, all the great ones, right? They took turns wearing the one outfit without envy or complaint, each kind of waiting patiently for their turn. So imagine the divine humility and camaraderie that they were able to show us at the very beginning. The same thing that I feel that in our community that we're lacking, right? If one went on a mission, he wore the robe while the other cheered him on. There was no rival. There was no ego, only cooperative grace. And this is why it's important for us to remember that lesson in Obedi, right? It's very important. And in Obedi, seeing the harmony among the Irumoles, Olodumare eventually rewarded them all. Each Irumole woke up with and found a mountain of beautiful garments, right? Sent by Olodumare. One unique outfit for each, in color, in patterns they loved. Each divine emissary was gained their individual identity, empowered to match the divine mission. And from that day, Obatala donned the pure white. That's what we call Obatala. When you break down his name, or you break down just the characteristics and the attributes of Obatala as the father of the white cloth, embodying calm, wisdom, and creation. Chango, of course, chose his fiery red, right? Manifesting his power, his passion, Ochun adored herself in gold and amber, flowing with sweetness and fertility. That primordial Iremoles had now become a very distinct Orisha, right? Each playing a specific role and personality, yet all still united in service to Olodumare, to God, right? And to the manifestation and the evolution of you and me. So kind of let that kind of sit for a minute and you start to kind of see, oh yeah, this is important. Right, this is a very important lesson for us to remember. This pataki illustrates that the orishas that we love were present at the creation of dawn, right? And their energies flow from something way more primordial than we can ever imagine. They came as Irumoles to shape the world. Obatala was molding the bodies, Odudua was laying down the land, Orumila was bringing the wisdom of Ifá, Ogun was clearing the paths and crafting tools, Ochun was ensuring that there was love and sweetness in creation. Our spiritual ancestors, right? The Irumules, our spiritual ancestors, not just those who came and died, but spiritual ancestors. That term redefined tells us something bigger. They built the bridge, right? There was a bridge once from this world, Aye, to Orun. Imagine that, a bridge where you can transit back and forth. And those are beautiful things for us to always remember, right? Hey, Buru boy, Abucheche. I see a lot of people. Wepa, Buru, hello. Hope all is great. Nah, it's all great. Gangulero, Alex and Buru boy, good to see you guys on here. Okay, so Orishas. Now let's kind of talk about this next stage of Orisha. Right? Now we arrive at the Orishas themselves. All right. The divine entities we interact with in ritual, in prayer. Who are they? Think about that. I want you guys to kind of just focus for a minute, right? We are really quick to say Chango this, Ochung this, characteristics, attributes. If you're a son of Chango, if you're a son of Yemaya, if you're a son of Ogun, a daughter of whoever, we all have this misinterpretation, right? Because now we arrive at the Orishas themselves, and the divinities and their entities were intact, right? The Orishas began to manifest, right, into these divinities and these forces of nature, right? So when we begin to picture Chango, Ochung, and whoever, you got to remember who they are, but by the forces of nature, their noble ancestors, their patron energy, right? What is their energy? And that continuous blessing of our lives and what they give us. Some Orishas originated, as those very Irumules who descended as primordials, right? Energies. But then we got to kind of take a step back. Some Orishas, didn't. Other Orishas were once exceptional humans, right? Kings, queens, heroes, those who gave to communities, those who followed the concepts of the 16 mandates of Ifá or Iwapale, however way they did in order to meet their destiny, right? They were extraordinary in their lives and they earned their elevation to a divine status. So when you start to kind of see that, okay, then that means that you and I have a roadmap. That means that you and I understand that when you received your hand of Ifá and you received your Awofaka and you received your Ikofa, right, you were given a no-kidding sign that was complemented by some witnesses and a prophecy and gave you a roadmap to greatness so that maybe one day you can elevate. Maybe you're the next Orisha. And that's something to always think about, right? In Lukumi tradition, we acknowledge that Igu Onya Orum, death is the road to heaven, right? Igu Onya Orum. And I know a lot of us like to remember Igu Lo Beosha, But Iku, Onya, Orun is another term that we need to remember. And for very few, that road leads to how we honor the Orishas. Right? So, for example, history tells us the great king of Oyo, right? A man, thunderous, might, charisma, who upon his death became Chango, the Orisha of thunder. Likewise, a legendary queen, right, who cared for the sick, was deified, right? And legendary queen is but one story. Legendary man is another story, right? And as we know, Pataki sometimes take different twists. But we know this person who cared for the sick, this human that cared for the sick, we know that person to be Babalu Aye, right? There are much and many cases where human virtue and Ache were so strong that the person transformed to Orisha, right? And then revered by generations. So these are our examples of life of courage and good character, and connects a person to the divine forever, and begins to multiply that into our community. Most Orishas, however, they never died because they were that primordial aspect, right? Or maybe if they did die because they elevated to an Orisha, their powers and their energies stood, right? They're ancient, they're ageless powers of Mother Nature itself, of Aye itself, right? The holy rivers, man, that flow, not just as water, but it's a living presence of Ochun. When people go into the river, right? How many of us are teaching our kids, hey, don't pee in the river, don't pee in the pool, don't pee. Think about it. You know what I mean? I know that sounds a little like, whoa, where's he getting at with this? But there were certain mannerisms that we were taught, right? There were certain things that we were told to respect, right? Because that is the energy and that is the sacred place of nature for these Orishas, washing away sorrow and bringing joy, and yet we desecrate them. The mighty ocean of Yemaya, you know what I mean? The mother of the fishes, the nurturer of life itself, right? The wind that howls, right? And the sudden storm, that's Oya. The fierce guardian of change and evolution, the marketplace, the chariot of the Eguns, the chariot of the transition of the spirit from this world to the next. Right? When you feel the heat of the sun, we greet, right? We greet many different perspectives from Olorun to Ologun, right? We begin to kind of see the natural forces of the iron and the core of this earth as Ogun. These natural forces are so infused with spirit that, in our Yoruba cosmology, in our text, in our 256 Oduns of Ifá, nature is not inanimate. It is pretty much, very much animate and alive in everything that we do. It's very vibrant with Orisha at every turn. Our role is to recognize and respect these divinities, right? In the wind, the fire, the water, the earth, even in technology and civilization. I had a class that I'm teaching in the courses. We just talked about Ogun, not understanding that, none of this is real. None of this, YouTube Live, me connecting to the cyberland, right? None of it is real without the metal and the iron and the steel and the microchips and everything that goes into it, the monitors, everything. That's Ogun. Right? And importantly enough, Orishas guide humanity. Right? And so a powerful verse in Ifá reminds me on how deeply the Orishas, care about mankind. Right? In one Odun of Ifá, humanity was suffering, right? And plagued by hunger, right? Illness in the early days of the world. The Imoles, right? The primordial divinities, those who later became Orishas, right? They pleaded on behalf of the human children to Olofin, which is an aspect of Olodumare. Olodumare broke off into three powerful primordial powers, right? Olodumare created these three powerful primordial powers. You can call it the Trinity. Why not? right? You can go back to Sermon 1 and you get a deeper look on that. And they asked Olofin for mercy. Chango, being a natural leader among them, he raised his voice with compassion. Because Chango's heartfelt prayers, Olofin listened. The Odum says that Olofin then provided a new sustenance never known before, right? And fish raining down from the sky started to feed the humanity, right? And in this way, through Orisha Chango's intervention, the people were saved from starvation, right? Now, if you start to kind of look at that a little bit more and you start to look deeper, it notes that the Imoles indeed earned their status as beloved Orishas and protectors of the children, us, me and you, on this road, which is earth. What a profound lesson. The Orishas gain ache and honor through the service, right, of others, servicing life through the acts of love and sacrifice. And that's something that we always got to remember. Now, this story carries a message to us. The Orishas are our divine family, intimately concerned with our well-being. This is another reason why I take a pause and I try to explain a certain concept within Lukumi, which is called Ocha. Right, through the evolution, you notice that the Orishas, the Imoles to the Orishas, they always go back up and they always look for the answer. And our ancestors, our spiritual ancestors, and the guidance that they provided when the slave trade occurred and everything else created this concept of Ocha, which noticed that we needed unity even within the tribes of the Orishas. There was no more such thing as Obatala and the tribes of Obatala. And when you get crowned, you only get crowned Obatala and nothing more. No, we needed to create something stronger, something that's going to withstand time, and we needed to evolve. And the concepts of Ocha came into be where we began to crown people, but we gave them the family of the Orishas, the 7 African powers, and all these things started to kind of mystify a little bit. And people will judge. People will say, oh, Ocha. Oh, no, that's not how we do it in the motherland. And then people start talking about the motherland, and I'm not going to get into debate what the motherland is, but you get to see that is, a great example of how the Orishas intervened and began to create a system that is not only thriving, but is moving our world and our community, you and me. Each Orisha is a teacher and a protector, right? When we call on to Ogun and we invoke the courage and to forge ahead, right, to overcome obstacles, as we did, right, when cutting the first path from Orung to Aye, right? When we sing to Ochun, we invite the sweet blessings, the prosperity to remind us that no one is an enemy to the water. Love conquers that bitterness, right? When something is too salty or too spicy, you water it down. Does that make sense? Because that's how our community was built. When we honor the Eguns, right, we remember that while most, did not or do not become Orishas, their guidance from the spirit realm is still vital. We stand on the shoulders, right, of giants, right? And so there's a famous, oriki or prayer. We'll call it a proverb, right? However far a stream flows, it never forgets its source. We, too, must not forget our source. Olodumare in Orum, and the Orishas and the ancestors who lead us to him. Let us also clarify, right, the terms to avoid confusion, right? Irumole and Orisha are used almost interchangeably, right? Since the first Irumoles became the Orishas. But strictly speaking, Irumole Orum refers to the celestial forms, right? Where the Orishas refer to that manifested presence that we feel today, the nature forces and the deified person that elevated, right? And we got to remember these things because these are our core lessons. It's not just about brujeria, people. It's not about, oh, okay, this Babalao is going to make an afoshe, he's going to make a powder, he's going to take some herbs, he's going to grab an animal and yakana, ikuoloru. You know what I mean? No, it's not just about that, because if it was just that, that's only part of the equation. Imagine now if you had the deeper level of understanding on what we're doing with these and what life force lives in these items and how do I manipulate these items in order to get to the desired effects, right? So we need to always remember that. We need to live the lesson, embrace the divine connection. So here's the big kicker. Here's the big kicker, right? And then I want to look at questions. I want to look and see what YouTube is serving up, right? All right. Why does this cosmology matter? Right? And again, it reminds us that we are never alone in this world. We just spoke a second ago about all the chaos that's going on around the world, did we not? Did we not see that, those things are happening every day? You could turn on whatever news station you like, read whatever newspaper you like. We always find ourselves in this same concept, right? How do we better align ourselves? Before an Orisha chooses you, before your Egun walk beside you, before any priest lays his hands on your head or gave you a consecration or an initiation, guess what? Your Ori already chose your destiny. Ori is your first Irumole. Ori was created without a body in the beginning. Ori was a divinity, descended into the body and became the crown of the human destiny. And this is why we have to take care of ourselves. This is why, we have to always remember that a person who forgets their Ori becomes a stranger to their own blessings. And too many people today, they chase validation. They chase social media. They chase relationships. They chase shortcuts. They chase brujeria fixes, witchcraft fixes. They chase advance, right? Or advice, right, from the wrong people. And they neglect the only force that cannot betray them. And if they don't align with them, can actually stop everything from happening. That's your Ori. That's my Ori. And we each have one. Right? So I want to make sure that, we are looking at this message properly. Right? And we stand up and we live what you claim. The world right now is losing discipline, losing value, losing character. The world burns, right? Okay, if it burns, it burns. Let it burn. But do not burn with it. The children of Ifá, we must be different, right? Our ancestors didn't survive slavery, exile, war, disaster for you to crumble over little things today. So here's my challenge to you. Strengthen your body. In Ogunda Meiji, it tells us a weak body cannot carry a strong destiny. Simple things. Eat better, move more, sleep properly. Your body is your temple that carries your Ori. That's challenge number 1 for you. Challenge number 2, discipline your spirit. No more excuses. No more, tomorrow, or I'll start Monday. Tomorrow happens to be Monday, right? No more waiting for signs while life passes you by. If you think that you're going to sit idle and not be able to and be successful, you're wrong. Iwuri Mei tells us, right, that those who do not act will be carried by the wind of other people's decisions. It's time that you start to make your decision, spiritually align yourself, complementing that with your physical actions to tackle this world and all the trials and tribulations of this world. Use your logic to embrace your Ori to spiritually complement so that you can get after it. Protect your mind. Turn off the negativity. Shut off the news. Don't worry about choosing one side or the other, right? Choose your friends like you choose your godparents carefully, right? Stop letting trauma lead your choices. You know, Samei, a mind without direction becomes a drum for chaos to play. Right? And when you reflect on those things, you got to start to kind of, really reflect and say, damn, what am I doing? How about this? And on Trupo Meji, right, it warns that humanity is going to face a period where lies will sound like truths. Crowds will follow madness. People will reject wisdom. Right? The young, right, will challenge the old. And only those that are grounded in the tradition will remain standing. So then, what are you doing to prepare yourself? What are you doing to block out all the distractions? Return to your Ori. Return to your ancestors. Return to discipline. Return to Ifá. Some of the things that you can do to do this is easy. When was the last time that, you spoke to your Ori every morning? Just a few minutes. It doesn't hurt you. You face the east, you grab your head, you talk to your Ori. Avoid, you can do it aloud, you can do it in silence, but you grab your Ori and you give thanks. You ask for clarity, you ask for strength. When was the last time with a glass of water, maybe some flowers and a candle, you lit up, the eguns? Maybe you have a bóveda. And maybe it's time to set up a bóveda. Maybe you don't know how to set up a bóveda. Maybe you need to find some guidance. You need to find someone who can help you. Right? Give elegua, eshu, an offering of attention. Right? How many times you walk by and just because it's not Monday or that once a week that you don't say hi or you don't say hey, knock on the floor 3 times and say hey, mafarafung eshu, mafarafung elegua. We have to begin to get back down to these basics, these core disciplines that once we start to do, it becomes muscle memory and it becomes natural and it becomes a strength that we have above everyone else. Right? No negative media before bed, protect your mind. All those things are important. Right? Take a break from the world's madness. You know what I mean? All those things matter. And I want to make sure that each and every one of you are kind of just flowing with it. Right? Empower your Ori to lead us towards our best lives. No Orisha, okay, and I tell you this truly, no Orisha blesses a person without the consent of their Ori. So, as we honor the Orishas, we don't forget to honor our divine light within ourselves. In the words of Ifá, wet soap on one's head disappears, yet the head remains. So how many times are you intending to use soap to clean your head and wash up your body, but the internals, the spirituality, where does it go? It still stays there. Is that dirty? And how do you clean that? Worldly things, materialistic things, they fade. But your head, your Ori, your consciousness does not. Remains to carry your destiny. Nurture it. Nurture it. So here's what I want to close with, and then I'm going to look at the chat and I want to see, what's here, what's not. But we have now kind of went over some Irumole Orum. We went over Irumoles. We went over the Orishas. All stages of divine, the continuum of divination, or the continuum of divinities, we'll call it. Olodumari's light flows, right, from Orum to Aye and back again. And our tradition preserves those truths. And we can live with purpose and understanding, because what I don't want you to do and what I want you to be armed with is with that data. So when that Jehovah Witness or that, Pentecostal or that Imam or someone challenges your belief system, you say, oh no, This is how I view the world. This is my Yoruba cosmology. This is my Ori, and this is my spirituality, and this is why. And you can talk to them about it, right? Next week, next Sunday, I'm going to delve even deeper into the personal aspects of this wisdom, right? The power of Ori, right? Our individual divine destiny. We're going to align with our Ori. That's my mission with you, right? And how does Orumila, the Orisha, wisdom and divination, guide our steps? We're going to find out. We're going to find out. And in fact, in the Odun of Ayobe, it gives us hints on how, this is to come. It's going to reveal that the heads was itself a divinity. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about before becoming attached to the body. And in the end, the head was crowned the king of the body and how that happened, right? This is why, to this day, the head touches the ground to show reverence to Orumila. In short, your Ori is kind of kingly or has a kingship divinity with you, but with also Orumila, which is why Orumila becomes a very important piece in this journey. We're going to explore deeper into this. So definitely stay tuned. I hope to see each and every one of you on next Sunday. And again, we're going to continue this school of thoughts, school of Ifá, right? And we're going to do our own Sunday sermons. And that's what this is. Just talking the faith, talking about the things that we see. So let me go to the chat now. Oh, okay. Boroboya. I got Viz. Viz is on here. Frederick, Alex. Let's see. I got Fred. I need to definitely strengthen my body and purify my bloodstream. This is all making sense to me about alignment. Alignment is important, Fred. Alignment is important. And one of the biggest factors of that alignment, right, is because we are all suffering from time to time. Again, history repeats itself, and we all have generational things that are of a negative nature that we need to clean up and we need to correct for the future, for our kids. And we do need to clean that bloodstream. We do, right? Good one. Ache Ochung is considered an Irumole. Ochung's energy, not Ochung. The energy that Ochung emanates is Inirumole Orum. It started as a primordial entity, right? And that energy continued to flow, right? Because it's not like the Irumules, and this is where I think a lot of times we may get confused, is because we try to humanize the powers, right? And then I get it, we got all our little statues, and Chango looks like this, and Ochung looks like this, and these are all just thoughts from the human mind trying to create something because it feels more comfortable seeing something. But if you think about this primordial energy that's flowing in the world, that God created, Olodumare created, and that same energy is transcending, and it was a necessary energy that needed to populate into this world, then that is a direct bloodstream from the primordial essence, right? Now, some energies didn't flow, right? But later on flowed when humans began to deify, right? Like Babaluaye, that energy of curing and healing, right? It's not just about the epidemics and he's the Orisha of smallpox, Babaluaye, and no, it's a little bit deeper than that. But those energies needed to play a role, and then you begin to kind of see where a lot of the Orishas we honor today, irrelevant of whether they deified or not, but some of them do have a pure stream, and some of them have a stream that came in after the fact and wasn't one of the original streams that came down. Well, no, great question. Great question there, Chris. Right on time for the new year, making the necessary changes to become our higher selves. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And then I got Minimo or Minmo, no, Mino 88, LA. Good to see you on here. Apologize. I know I butchered the name. But hey, if there's nothing else, I'm hopefully, this was something that you guys can take back with you. Hopefully this is something that you guys will continue to address and share and share with the fellow practitioners, right? This is not an offense to anybody else. If you have a Bawalao, you have an Olorisha, it doesn't matter. This has nothing to do with Iles. This has nothing to do with, loyalty to a house or not. No, this is just pure knowledge. There's no recruiting here. There's no nothing. But there's an education piece that I think is lacking. I had a conversation, and I'll make this short because I know you all got busy days. I had a conversation just recently with one of my godsons, and we had the conversation about transactional versus transformation, right? Transactional is those priests and priestesses that say, hey, give me X amount of money. I'm going to align you. I'm going to give you this Orisha. I'm going to initiate you. And then when the job is over, they wipe their hands and they're clean and they go away. And you never hear from them again unless you need something from them and you call them, right? Not understanding the value of that transformative, priest or priestess. That's the key. Find that priest and priestess, and now you got something going for you. Right now, social media is crazy with tons of people that are transactional. I can't get on one social media group without getting 5, messages in my inbox talking about whether or not I need something, or hey, call me on this. I do consultations. And I'm like, whoa, I align with Maudi, brother. You know what I mean? Not only do I do Ifá, I got my full-time job. I pay my bills. I don't need to live off the faith. I don't need to do any of that. You know what I mean? And so then that's not saying that other people that do that are wrong, but understanding that if you can find that person, because I always say people are what they're worth, and you find that person that's giving you the top-notch transactional experience, but then is also a transformative leader that is going to push you forward, man, now we're talking. I'll pay anything for that. But sometimes it's hard to find those two, right? Bringing those two together, you got to be careful, right? So again, hopefully you guys take this with a grain of salt. Again, share, subscribe, do what it is that you guys got to do. But I don't think I see any other further questions on here. But hey, just want to tell each and every one of you it was my pleasure. It's a fair Bawalao. At least I hope so. Coming at you. As always, many blessings to each and every one of you. See you next Sunday, right? And more videos to come out for the members because I have some things planned out there to kind of keep throwing it in there. Next Sunday's sermon will be just for the members. And then the following Sunday will be public. And I will just keep flip-flopping that, right? Just to make sure that, the members are actually getting, their money's worth. That's really what it comes down to. But I don't forget the public. And this is the reason why I want to make sure I still do these public as well. So with that said, Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche, Cyberland, from my house to yours. Have a great Sunday, and I see you next time. All right. Iburu Boya, Ibucheche.